Welcome to the First Mentor podcast. Here, you will hear us talk about a variety of topics for the entire family that will hopefully spark a discussion, create a new curiosity, or simply teach you something new. The goal is to inspire you to learn life skills and soft skills not taught in school and prepare you to live an extraordinary life. Come on and spend some time with us on your commute to school or anytime you're free.
Hello, curious minds. This is your host, Vanessa Yang. Welcome and thank you for joining us for episode 2 of the First Mentor podcast. So today we'll be speaking with Dr. Amy Lau, a pediatrician with over 10 years of experience, and we're going to cover specifically mental health and how we as a family can help improve or even potentially prevent certain problems. Quick background on Dr. Lau. She studied at the Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science in Illinois and completed her residency at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Dr. Lau has worked at Children's Hospital Orange County, St. Joseph, and is currently practicing at Hoag Medical Group. She's an extremely knowledgeable and caring doctor. And at the end, please don't forget to subscribe or add us to your favorite list. We would love to hear from you. And without further delay, here's our interview with Dr. Lau. And I wanted to welcome Amy to our podcast today.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
And, I actually wanted to talk to Amy for a long time because we know each other. We're actually related through marriage, right? So she has been really, really helpful throughout my entire life as a mother. Every time there was little things, I was like, please help. Because sometimes it's just really convenient to have a family member who is a pediatrician. So she has so much insight to share and added a lot of values to our kids' health and what have you. And I really wanted to start with you giving our listeners a little bit of a background, because I know I read what you shared with me and I was like, oh, there's certain things I didn't know about you. So it's a great time for me to get to know you from a professional level. So share with us listeners your background, please, and a little bit about your story and journey about becoming a pediatrician.
So my name is Amy Lau. I'm a pediatrician in Orange County. I grew up in Los Angeles and I went to UCLA for my undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And at UCLA, that's when I decided I want to become a pediatrician. So how it started was one day I was walking down Bruin Walk and one of the person on Bruin Rocks came up to me and said, hey, do you want to volunteer to be a camp counselor at this HIV camp? And at that time, actually, I worked at HIV lab. So it was a perfect coincidence. And then so I talked to her and I thought, oh, that's be great. So I volunteered for the summer to be a camp counselor at this HIV camp. And I got to see all the kids who they actually got HIV through their parents.
Wow.
They were on lots of meds. So I spent the time being the camp counselor, helping them. And it was an amazing experience. After I came out of the experience, I decided I want to become a pediatrician so I could take care of these sick kids and help them. And then so then I became a neuroscience major at UCLA. And I went to med school at Chicago Med. Which is now called Rosalind Franklin University. I graduated and then I did my residency at a county hospital, which is Harbor UCLA.
Okay.
I spent 3 years in residency, and then when I came out, I moved to Orange County, and this is where I've been practicing as a pediatrician for the last 12 years.
12? Well, has it been 12 years already?
Yeah, 12 years. I've been a pediatrician for technically 15 years now.
Wow, time flies. I still remember your stories when you were in Chicago telling me about how you didn't eat for months and were losing lots of weight when you first started. All those stories, I was like, wow, that's time flies.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know, I love kids too. And I've seen you around kids. You're just really, really good with them and caring and the way you speak to them at their level and everything. And I'm sure kids are probably a really rewarding part of your job. And so share with us a little bit more about that.
Well, the reason why I love being a pediatrician is because kids are truly amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
they could be really, really sick, but they still would be super cheerful. I mean, you give them a sticker and they're happy.
That's so true.
Right? You give them, and they could be going through the hardest thing and they're just so sweet. And it's really, truly amazing how well they could get through the illness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing is for the reason I pick peds versus adult is because for adults a lot of time is they won't follow what you would recommend. You tell them to exercise, lose
Mm-hmm.
weight or whatever, or stop smoking. And adults, they don't listen. And plus for them, the disease course that they have is actually harder to recover from. For
Oh,
kids,
yeah.
kids recover really well. And the most part is, parents love the kids so much they will do everything to make sure the kids get the right treatment that they need. And so that's why kids actually recover better.
Uh-huh.
Um, Also because they have loving parents and make sure that they do the right thing to make sure the kids get better. And the one thing I love about being a pediatrician is because my medical knowledge and for everything I know and everything that I learned in medical school, I use that to help guide parents so that they could do what's best for the kids.
Yes.
So, because a lot of times kids don't get that sick, but when they do, it's very scary for parents. So, for me to be able to walk them through that, to guide them through using my medical knowledge, I think is very rewarding. And on top of that, I get to see the kids from very young and help the parents go through the ups and downs of parenthood. Um,
Fun stuff.
yeah, there's a lots of ups and downs in parenthood and everything. And then, my job is to make sure that I guide them through all of this so that to keep their kids healthy and safe.
Yes. And you see kids, I would say from very young age as a baby all the way up to what age?
Eight, 18 to 21, depending on the situation.
Yeah. Because I
Usually,
heard some kids don't want to grow up. They still want to see their
oh yeah, well,
pediatrician.
for some of the kids who have like really, chronic medical problems, and it's
Mhm.
hard to transition them to the adult side because
I
there's
see.
not that many adult specialists for that particular disease, then a lot of times I will keep them up to 21 before make that
I see.
transition. But for most kids, usually my best visit is when they come in for the college. They bring in the college paperwork and I
Oh.
clear them for college and I talk to them, get them pep talk about entering college. And they tell me their goals and everything. I sign off and then send them the happy way. That's really
Oh.
my favorite visit is the when they come in and tell me that they're ready to go off to college.
Wow. I know. And you probably saw some of them grow up, right? From
And I still
really
have a lot
small.
of them like from college have still write back to me and send me like tell
Oh.
me, oh, I got to Stanford. This is where I'm doing now. And so I actually still every year still get letters from my patients, which is nice.
Wow. Yeah, that
So
really says a lot about you then,
yeah,
which
so
I
that's
know
why
already.
that's why I think this is really a wonderful job because I get to see the kids grow up.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so sweet. I can only imagine a lot of you. You probably have tons of stories to tell. We can go through some of the stories later. But I know as a pediatrician, right, from my own experience, obviously as a mother, you do annual checkups, just to questionnaires and just to see if everything is on par, how they're growing, their weight, their eyesight, and everything, right? But another crucial part for physicians, especially as a pediatrician, is also assessing the mental health of patients, right? And I've seen it with my kids. There's started to be a questionnaire that goes around.
Mhm.
I think like the tween age. Um, so can you describe this process a little bit? Because I know, especially nowadays, there's just so much with kids and stress and mental health issues. So I wanted to cover the topic today.
Yeah, so starting age 11 is when I start screening kids for depression. When they come in for their 11 or up uh, yearly checkup, one thing is before they even enter the not in the waiting room, they fill out this questionnaire. It's called a PHQ-9 questionnaire. This is one that will screen them for depression. So I could go
Mm,
through some of the questions for you, so you could see what's on the questionnaire.
sure.
So they'll ask for the last 2 weeks how often, one, low interest or pleasure in doing things, two, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, three, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or sleeping too much, four, feeling tired or having little energy, five, poor appetite or overeating, six, feeling bad about yourself that you're a failure or to let yourself down or your family down,
Hmm.
seven, trouble concentrating on any things, eight, moving or speaking too slow that people notice, or the opposite, too fidgety or restless. 9, thoughts that you'll be better off dead or hurting yourself. And 10, if you checked any of these problems, have any of these difficulties have added to your work or home or school life. And they grade on, you put the grading of not at all, several days, more than half days, and nearly every days. So before I even enter the room, I get this questionnaire and I grade it. And then any score over 9 tells me that kid has no signs of depression. And it gives me different gradients. So if they have really severe depression, that's the one thing I address the most.
Sure. And I wanted to know, obviously, they're filling out the questionnaire with their parents, and sometimes the parents might have a slightly different observation. How do you make sure the score that you see on the paper is actually reflecting or is close to reflecting what's going on in their personal life?
Well, this is confidential. So we tell the kids that they answer, but without the parents have to not look at the answers.
Okay, so the kids do it by themselves.
Yeah, the kids. Yeah, so the thing is, this question is handed to kids. Parents don't answer it for them. So we give it to kids to answer. So this way, and then we tell them, try to be as accurate as you can. And there's a time when sometimes once they get to more like the teenage years, like 13 and up, then a lot of time I would tell parents, well, there's some teenage question I need to ask your kids. Would you be okay if you step outside so I could talk to them personally about certain things? And everything we talk about is confidential. And the parents understand that I don't talk to them, discuss what we talk about. So this way I have the time to sit with the kids to pretty much ask them, like, do you feel safe in your home? Do you feel safe at school? Is there anything that you want to discuss with me? Everything we talk about is confidential.
Yes, because I think especially in the teenage years, they're starting not to want to share with their parents as much or at all anymore.
Oh, yeah. And that's nice because a lot of time is the starting from 11 on, some of these questionnaires I've actually got it where the kids don't realize that they do have some anxiety or depression, and then I pick it up, and then I actually will share with the parents that, look, I think you don't realize, but your kids are dealing a lot more than you think. And I ask the parents how they feel, and a lot of times is before we start, I ask the child, like, are you okay if I share the results of the question with your parents and you in the room together? Most of the time the kids actually are fine with that.
Okay. What are some of the most common mental health problems?
Anxiety is one of the biggest one. Yeah, especially this year during COVID times, the kids have a lot more anxiety than you realize. Because kids actually will pick up, they're more sensitive. They sense when parents are, have anxiety and have a lot of worries and everything, kids will pick that up.
Yes.
And then if they have any stress at schools, and depending on how they could handle things, some kids could handle stress really well. Other kids have never have to handle that stress, so it's hard for them to process.
Sure.
So I think as a parent, teaching your kids how to handle stress makes a big difference to when they go on later in life.
Can you actually define the difference? Because I sometimes use the words maybe interchangeably or what have you. So maybe the difference between anxiety or just stress and depression. I know depression, I assume, is probably the most severe out of the three, but can you share with our listeners a little bit more about how you define each of the ones?
Well, all of us will have some stress in life, right? Because life is not perfect. So for anxiety, it's more for these kids, they constantly worry. You could tell because they're constantly worried about every little thing. These are the kids, like, if they have a test, all they do is think about the test they're doing and worrying about it. Or, every parents kind of know their own kids, and your kids who are the one, like, there's the one who happy-go-lucky versus the other one that every little thing, going to a party is stressful for them. They worry about this, or they worry about if they're going to do well in school, or if they worry about doing certain activities and everything. And the anxiety is when they actually worry so much that it causes them more problems.
Sure.
Like, if they have a big test coming up, or they have some event that they have to do, or some competition. Some kids thrive well with competition, but some kids are, then they won't eat. They constantly worry about it, every little thing. So that's anxiety. And then for parents, you have to try to recognize it. A lot of parents actually don't recognize it, because then the kids who I've been seeing that have anxiety is they'll come in with chronic issues they don't describe the anxiety, but it's they'll say, oh, my stomach hurt all the time. The parents will bring them like, well, he's always complaining about his stomach hurting, or he's always complaining about headache, or all these like little soft signs and everything. And then I realized that it's not because they have a stomach ache because they really have like vomiting, diarrhea, that kind of stomach ache. It's because you worry so much that you have a stomach ache. You worry so much that you have a headache.
Oh, I see. So can you kind of use constant headaches or stomach pains as red flags for
Yeah, those are
potential?
red flags.
Okay.
Yeah. So I always tell parents, if any of your kids constantly, have like chronic complaints where, like especially like, if you notice like, oh, right before test, they're always like, or even like a week before, every day complain, oh, my stomach hurt, my stomach hurt. When the parents come in with that, oh, he have constantly complain about his stomach hurting, and then we check him over, and and there's no organic reason for it, no medical reason for it. Or for the headache, headache, I always check, make sure their vision is fine, making sure certain things, but constant headache is also a red flag too, because it's more that kids, they don't know how to tell parents, oh, I'm worried, I'm worried, I'm worried. But then
Sure.
what they say is like, oh, my stomach hurt, oh, my headaches. Oh, or some kids will have all over like, oh, my feet hurts. Oh, my, they constantly have that
Some sort
constant
of pain.
the same pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have actually a lot of pain, chronic pain.
Got it. What about teens and older kids? Do they complain about physical pains, or are they expressing it in a different way?
In a different way, they're the one that's more withdrawn, and what shows up is sometimes with schoolwork. So like, so the difference between anxiety and like depression is, if you could see some of the questionnaire here, that really like lose the signs, or like, you lose interest in the things that you like. If your kids like video games, suddenly, don't ever want to do video games again,
Okay.
or suddenly don't want, don't have interest in all the stuff that they used to like,
Uh-huh.
or or they have trouble sleeping. The big one for teenagers is having trouble sleeping, not sleeping at all, or sleeping way too much,
Okay.
or constantly complain, oh, I'm too tired, or they overeat, or they suddenly don't eat at all whatsoever. And trouble the big one where parents are always like, oh, I think you have ADHD, ADD, he can't, he's not doing well in school, he's not concentrating. And it's really the concentration is what is the depression, affects the concentration, and that's why they actually don't do well in school.
I see.
Or so the big thing is the thoughts of suicidal thoughts and everything. So these are the one that, if you have a lot of these signs and everything, when you add up the score, then you could realize that they actually is all this is because of depression more than anything else.
I see. I know. And sometimes I think, especially in certain cultures, it's such a taboo, or in a lot of families. So parents don't even think about that this is a potential problem, right? So they just brush it over, or they just see it as, like you said, a physical problems with stomach ache and what have you.
Yeah, they'll see us like, oh, suddenly, he's straight A student. How come he's not doing well in school anymore? And then hanging out with bad kids, and then and doesn't have all the stuff he used to want to do. He doesn't want to do anymore. And what they don't realize is not because they're becoming a bad teenager. It's actually because they're more depressed than the parents think. And if you don't get help for the depression, it could spiral out of control.
Yes.
I actually had some teenagers who, when I screened them and everything, and found out that they had suicide thoughts. I even had one that actually had plans.
Wow. And I hope you were able to talk them through it, because that's pretty scary.
It is pretty scary. So that's the thing, is that's why we had these screening question, and you'll be surprised. Some of the kids is actually pretty honest when they do the questionnaires, and that's when we actually pick it up. And parents will be very surprised they didn't realize this.
Yeah, I think parents sometimes don't realize, because everybody's so busy, and parents many times might have their own anxiety to deal with, right? Especially this year with COVID-19 and everything. I'm sure that has further accelerated the problems that we're seeing in parents and kids alike with anxiety and depression, right? I'm sure you've seen
Yes, it's definitely. And remember, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So usually the parents have high anxiety or family history of depression. Actually, the kids actually show that too.
Is it because they observe their parents acting a certain way, or do you think it's more genetically linked?
Genetics. They
Oh,
actually have
okay.
done studies where, if there's a suicide in the family
Mm-hmm.
or the depression in the family, the kids, the next two generations, they have more prone to it. Probably more for the genetically, they might have the imbalance,
Uh-huh.
the neurotransmitter imbalance, and on top of that, if parents don't know how to cope properly, the kids don't learn well
Yes.
too, and then they could
Yes.
cope wrong too. So, and that's like it spirals down.
Yes. And since we're talking about parents, right? So what can they do as a family? I would say even maybe older siblings can help their younger siblings or vice versa, right? So how can a family help detect potential problems at home early on? Like besides looking at some of the physical red flags or their change in interest, what else can the family do to help detect them?
So usually I tell parents, at the early age, you do want to have a really good open communication with your kids. So
Mm-hmm.
then this way, if things pop up, they have someone to talk to. So I always tell parents that, especially the kids, because I know these kids from the
Sure.
beginning, a lot of the kids. So when I start seeing anxiety, I start, giving tools for parents to help them with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if I see that, they're having issues and everything, the one advice I tell parents is, start a journal with your kids.
Okay.
So I have the kids, I always tell them, even when they're very young, if I have any kids that have major anxiety, I tell them, even if you can't write, you could draw a picture. So
Okay.
every night before you go to bed, I have the kids, write down, do two things. One, write about the bad things that happened to them that they were bothered by.
Okay.
You write it down, and two, write down the things that make them happy. And once you're done writing your journal, you do this about half an hour before bedtime. You close the book. Once you close the book, you don't worry about that. Like all the stuff that bothered you, once you close the book, you don't think about it anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of helps the kids kind of organize their thoughts and then put it down. And then once they close the book, they feel better about it.
Yeah. You poured it out, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
leaving it behind.
Yeah, and then teach the kids that it's okay to feel bad about certain things. It's okay, you don't need to suppress it. You just write it down, but also, you try to get them to remember that good thing that happened too. You want to
Sure.
kind of balance. And then
Absolutely.
so every night they had to write in the journal. And the end of the week, I tell parents, no, you could do Sunday brunch, or you're going to probably do a family meal together on the weekend. So I tell parents, either you pick one parent or both parents, where you say, okay, you have an hour with your kids where after you have Sunday brunch, you send the kid up to his room or her room, and they have her go through her journal and read and reflect. So they have a time of
Okay.
reflection. So because a lot of time it's like, oh, Monday you feel really bad about this person saying this bad, no, calling you this name or whatever. But by the time it's Sunday, you read it, it's like, oh, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's the thing. You want the kids to reflect, and a lot of time when they reflect, they look at all the bad stuff. They're like, oh, no, on day one it was such a big deal, but now it's
Mhm.
like, oh, you think about it, it's no big deal. But also you want them to read about the good stuff. They're like, oh, I forgot that we did this fun thing.
Sure.
Oh, I forgot about this, that my friend said something nice to me and everything. And
Mhm.
then so when they have that time to reflect, they think about uh they realize that the things that they felt bad about for that week is not a big deal anymore,
Mhm.
and it helps them remember the good things that happened to them that week. And then I tell them, after the child had the time to reflect and read their journal, they had to pick one topic to talk about with their parents. So when they come down to talk to you, and this is an hour where I tell parents there's no judgment. You do not say anything negative, is to listen to your kid.
Just to
um,
listen. Yeah.
yeah, and then they pick one topic they could talk any about. So like, if example, like, oh, if a kid made fun of um, for the child on Monday, someone called them a bad name and they feel really bad about it. So they could talk, oh, there's this one kid I don't like, how to do it. Then you can listen to them,
Mhm.
and then you can also give them, this is where you could give advice, like, oh, I remember when I was a child, we did this, and this is how I dealt with it. So this way you kind of give them your kids guidance
Sure.
about like what to do for certain things. Other time it's just like listening and just give them confirmation, like it's okay to feel bad and everything,
Mhm.
but this is life, and then let them just like vent it out. So it's just more that being able to talk to your parents.
Sure.
And then
they do it every week.
yeah, so that if you do this like once a week, where the kid, you start this young, so you want to start this at 10 or before they become teenagers, right? So then you just set up so that if they know that once a week they have this time with their parents where it's going to be non-judgmental, right? You can't say, oh, I'm so mad that you didn't but you did this, you don't, no judgment, so you just sit there. So this is when they know that, oh, I could talk to my parents about anything and it's fine. And that actually creates a better relationship with parents and kid. And then once you go into the teenage years, where it gets to be a lot harder, but at least they know that you have the option, so that if anything comes up, sometimes that's where the big stuff will come up, and they'll come back to like, Mom, look what happened, and let me tell you about this. But because if you didn't set up this relationship early on where they feel safe to talk to you, it will get harder as a teenager, right?
Sure. What recommendations do you have for families? For example, it's great what you shared when they start young, but let's say they have not done it and you have a teenager coming into your office,
you still
right?
could do it.
Still same process still works
Still
for
the same
them?
process, because I still haven't worked at teenagers, because that's the thing is I pick up the mental illness or the depression, whatever, anytime. So that's the thing is anytime you could use this process. The thing is, this is just one tool. So what it is this is a tool. The reason I like this is because I actually didn't learn about doing journals, all that stuff, until in my ethics class at UCLA. My professor told us we had to keep a daily journal.
Yeah.
And that's how he started. It's like you had to keep a daily journal. He didn't read through it and everything, but after you realize that keep my journal, writing it out and everything, it gives you it's a release. So
It
this
is.
is it is. And then another time
Coping
is
mechanism almost.
it is. So this is the thing is this is a tool you want to give your kids that want to figure out how to cope with their stress, right? Because you don't give them these tools, it could spiral out of control once they get into a high stress situation. So like college is a big stressor, especially if you didn't give them these skills. So what
That's true.
is at any time as a teenager, even as if you didn't start young, even now, like if your kids have anxiety issues or depression, which with COVID that's have made it a lot worse for kids. You can start this now. So one, that they have a using a journal as a coping mechanism for them to organize their thoughts. And especially the kids who have a lot of anxiety, worry, and they can't sleep. Once they write into the journal and they could, and you tell them you can write whatever you want. It doesn't have to be neat. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just scribble whatever you want. Just get your thought and feelings out. And once you close the book, you don't think about it anymore.
Okay.
Right. So giving that tool, that's why it's a two-part tool. One is for the kids to learn to cope and go through their emotions, understand their emotions, and help them to put their worries down. And once they close the book, you don't worry about it anymore.
Yes.
And then two, you could do it where you don't need to it's ideal you want them to talk to you, but if they feel more comfortable at once they get older age, if they're not that comfortable talking to you, you want them to at least talk to somebody that you kind of trust.
Yes.
So you kind of set up so that it's more teaching them that, hey, when you have problems, you don't keep it closed in to yourself.
Absolutely.
To share with someone, because if you do this, this is a cheaper therapy than having go to a therapist.
No, I bet. I know. I hear you, because I think I completely agree with that. My way when I'm mad or angry or upset at something, I just need a person just to talk to, just let it all out, and I feel so much better afterwards.
And the thing is, once you're older, you actually have a person now, right? But it took many years of you to figure out who's your good friend, who's your support and everything, especially with teenage girls. That's the thing is, girls and guys, they're different in how they cope with certain things.
Absolutely.
So for the girls, is that having that one friend to talk to, or to go to when you have issues and everything. That's what girls do, right? They talk about the problems, and a lot of time is if you talk to a guy, the guy will try to come up with a solution. And, right? That's a typical guy thing. And then the girls are the one that you don't want to hear a solution. You just want someone to empathize with them,
Yes,
right?
so true.
So I mean, that's why you start this early. It's kind of like even in the teenage years, it's more about teaching them how to cope with their problem, cope with the anxiety, cope with the worries. Like that's why starting a journal helps.
And what if you have a teenager who just says no to anything you say? So if you suggest a journaling process and they're like, nope, this is stupid, I don't want to do it. Do you have maybe another tool that has worked well with your patients?
Well, I actually, sometimes I do actually set them up with a therapist
When it's necessary, huh?
when it's necessary. There's actually, especially when they're like in the minor, like when there's two categories where it's like mild signs of depression and severe. Like severe, I send to psychiatrist. But when it's mild, a lot of times I was like, okay, well, let's at least try a session where you talk to with a psychologist, so that you
I
can
always
kind of.
mix those two up. What's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
Psychiatrists are the one that could give you antidepressants, like medication to
I
treat you.
see. Okay.
A psychologist is not a medical doctor, but they do have like a PhD or a master's in psychology. And with that, they do more like behavioral training, cognitive training. So it's a lot of time is they'll sit down and then kind of give you tools like coping tools. So that's what
I see.
psychologist is good for. So that this is somebody that's outside of your family, that will kind of help with the kids. Because I have some teenagers that it really helps that want to acknowledge that, hey, you do have some depression or even mild anxiety. A lot of times, like I will ask them, like, if you don't want to do this with your family, it's fine, because I understand not every family can do this. And I'll say, well, let me set you up with a psychologist so that they could just talk to you, kind of set you up with some coping tools. Because
to help them further, yeah.
Yeah, because the big thing is learn how to cope, because throughout your life, you're not gonna, as life goes on, especially once you go to college or after college, school, the workforce, and having a family and stuff, there's a lot of stressors in your life.
Yeah.
Right? Big stressors.
Yeah.
But the kids that are going to be successful is the one who know how to handle the stressor. So the best thing as a parent is teaching them the tools to learn how to handle the stress.
No,
Because if
it's
they don't,
so true.
if you
So
don't
true.
show them early on how to handle stress, how to handle disappointment and everything, then when they get in the real world, it could be pretty devastating for some people.
Yes.
And if they don't know how to learn to cope with it properly.
I agree with you.
That's why I even tell parents early on for your kids, sometimes you just have to let your kids fail.
Yep.
Nope. And
Agree.
then you're like, okay, I'm not going to do your homework for you. I'm not going to help you. Wait till last minute. You deal with it, and then here's the consequences. And then, you actually learn more from your failure more than anything else. And then
So true. So true.
because once they learn the first failure, the first disappointment, then they had to learn how do you cope with these feelings, and you teach them early on to face these challenges. It will go on with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And that's why my ethics professor used to that's the best class I took, because we had to talk about a lot of biomedical ethical stuff. But the first thing he did was starting day one was okay, everyone had to keep a journal for this whole quarter. Everyone had to write in the journal every single night.
Yeah.
And that's when that's when I discovered, actually, forcing to write this journal really helped me deal with the stress of college and trying to get into med school. And that's had traveled with me.
Yeah, I did when I was a teenager. I did a diary, and every time I was upset at something because I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone, it just writing it down felt like a release. Like you said, just putting it down, it just somehow felt like it was significantly reduced or went away just for writing.
Yeah. And that's why it does help a lot of kids, and they don't realize that. So that's why I always tell parents, I always tell the kids, let's have a deal. Let's at least try this for 2 weeks. No one's going to read your journal. It does not have to be perfect and everything, but at least try for 2 weeks, every single night. And then a lot of times the kids will discover that it does help.
Yeah. And I think as far as coping mechanism, what I do with my kids, thing I ask them to do is, or to learn to think about, is to focus on what they can control within themselves, right? You cannot control different situations, everything around you. This is, XYZ is going on. You cannot control it. What you can control is your reaction to it or your actions. And that's something important. So just conversations between parents, sharing their years of experience with them is really helpful at a young age, or even when they become teens or young adults.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's the thing is, growing up with my parents were so busy working
Yep.
that, coming from an immigrant family, so pretty much you just have to be thrown in and figure things out yourself, right?
Yeah, I can
And
relate.
yeah, and I think because of that, it actually makes us stronger because early on I need to figure out finances. I was like the one who had balanced my parents' checkbook by the time I was in fourth grade, and
Wow.
helped them. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because my parents didn't know how to do any of this stuff. So then they're like, oh, you can read it right here. And then at fourth grade, I did all the bills, and then when I
Wow,
went
good
to
for you.
college, they got passed on to my sister, and then my brother when they go off to college and everything. So
Yeah.
that's the thing is because my parents were very hands off,
Uh-huh.
and then pretty much we had to figure things a lot early on. So I feel like when I went off to college, I was actually better prepared than a lot of um, my roommates.
No, this is so true. I think I'm in the same situation where I grew up with immigrant parents,
Hmm.
and because of their lack of the language, they were throwing contracts at me at a young age. And I'm like,
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
don't want to read this, but they're like, they can't understand. So they would make me do certain things, or with my younger brother, if there was problems with the teacher, they couldn't go in. They didn't go to
Hmm.
parent teacher night. So guess who had to do it for them at a young age? I did.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
for me, I was a translator for every medical stuff.
I
So,
bet.
like when my cousin was sick, I had to go in, I had to be the translator.
Yes, but it made us stronger. I so agree with you, because sometimes if a parent does everything for you, you don't learn.
Hmm.
And through failure and bigger challenges, you learn so much more. I
Yeah.
realized I came to the US at 19. You and I are both lucky to have parents who know how to cook really well, right? So
Hmm.
my
Yes.
mom used to shush me out of the kitchen all the time because I was too slow for her or too clumsy or what have you. So I
Uh-huh.
only learned how to eat, not how to cook. And when I came here and I was all by myself, I was like, oh, how do you do certain things, right? So
Hmm.
you are forced to learn. So it's a good thing to just let go a little bit and
Hmm.
let them experience things.
And I feel like this generation, the parents are too much of a helicopter parents
Yeah.
and do everything for their kids. And a lot of time I tell them like, you have to really let go, and then it's better for the kids to make a lot of mistakes early on in life,
Hmm.
very young in life, learn failure, so they could rise to the occasion. Or not, then you have these kids who are like off in college, and then the first time they fail at something and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yes.
And my friends who's a professor, in one of the college, she's like, I have parents who write me emails about their kids' grade. I'm like, they're
In
college students.
college?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's the thing is that parents, some of these parents are such helicopter parents that even in college they're like doing the kids' homework and helping them, and then that's like the kids have like no motivation to do things
Oh,
because the
yes.
parents are always there to rescue them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, sometimes I am a little bit of a helicopter, but I always have to remind myself, okay, back off, Vanessa, back
mhm.
off.
Yeah, so that's the thing. One thing as I tell parents is like, uh, if you want your kids to have stronger, soft skills,
Hmm.
you have to early on, give them challenges, but let them fail at it, so they could learn to cope with failing, and then with that they actually learn better, right?
So agree. No, this is really good.
Oh,
Go
and
ahead.
that's the reason why, like, usually during my visits, I always tell parents starting at age 5, I'm like, okay, I always joke with them, this is Dr. Lau's rule, is however old you are, that's how many different chores you have to do a week. So starting
Ooh, I
age
like that.
5, oh yeah, starting age 5, and they all know about this rule. So every year I remind them. Starting age 5, they had to do like 5 chores, different chores, and the day after your birthday, you can add one more to the list.
Yeah,
So you
happy
start the
birthday.
and but the kids had to have a choice in it. Like they had to think about what they want to do and everything.
Oh,
And
okay.
then so they have a choice in picking out what chores they're gonna do. And if you start this early on with the setting the responsibility and everything, then each year you add. By the time you're 15 years old, you're used to 15 chores a week.
Yes,
Right?
and it's no big deal because
It's
it's
no big deal. But then if you introduce it too late at 15, they're like, oh, they'll bulk at it. So that's
oh
why usually a lot
yes.
of time I tell parents, starting age 5, I always joke about what's Dr. Lau's rule. And the kids who've been with me a long time, they'll
they
they'll
they
tell
roll
me,
their eyes and they know.
Yeah, but they know, and then
Yeah.
they'll tell me, oh yeah, I do this now. I help out with this, and because at age 5, the kids are very, they want to help out. My daughter, my little one, she's every time I was like, can I wash dishes? Now I'll help put her on
Aw.
because she really likes washing dishes there. So she'll sit on and then I'll give her the plastic dishes to wash.
Oh, that's so
Yeah, so
cute.
because she wants to help out and everything. So that's where you want to take advantage of the kids helping you because once they become teenagers, oh, there's no helping out.
Yeah, no, I know. No,
Yeah.
what I do is I'm also teaching them that failure is okay, or that if they break a dish, it's okay, right? As parents, we tend to react. We're like, "Oh my God, why are you not more careful?" But I learned to teach myself to say, "It's okay. You dropped this. You spilled the milk. Guess what? You're cleaning it up, not me. So it's okay. You failed, but make sure you clean up your mess, right?" Um,
Yep.
the other thing I wanted to go into is, especially as kids become teenagers, right? You as a parent are not as involved with them, but their most important people in their life become their friends now. And I wanted to see from a friend's perspective, how can friends help their friends if they maybe see certain red flags of potential mental health problems?
So, well, you hope that your kids pick, good friends, that's kind of same level
Yeah.
as your kids, right? And a lot of time it's good that I think early on getting to know your kids' friends.
Mm-hmm.
So the nice thing about growing up in my household is like I still keep in touch with my high school friends,
Awesome.
and my parents actually know my high school friends even because we used to have parties at my house because my parents always like okay we always do a Christmas party every year and it's always at my parents' house and my parents actually know my friends actually really
Yeah.
well even now
Mm-hmm.
because the one thing as I think a good part of being a parent is if you take the time to know your kids' friends
Mm-hmm.
really helps a lot.
No, so
And
true.
and then the one thing I teach kids is you want to teach them about empathy, teach them about caring for your friends. I think if you teach your kids well enough, they actually will pick out certain so like if your kids their friends are not doing well and everything, or you see red flags, they probably might confide and talk to you, and then you have a good relationship with the other parents. Maybe you could give them a hint, like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe you should talk to your daughter about this, whoever.
Yes. And I think it's so true. From a very early age, I always love to have them set up play dates
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to meet the parents.
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head. To me, it's like, as parents, we want our kids to be surrounded by kids who are similar, right? Similar
Similar, yeah.
values.
Mm.
So really get to know them and for them to share information, hopefully, and help your child as they're growing up because they tend to confide more in their friends than you
Mm-hmm.
once they
Mm-hmm.
become teenagers. So it's very true. Picking the right friends is such an important task.
It is very important, and you really hope your kids pick good friends and that will be a good influence.
Yes.
And
No.
that's why even though my parents worked so much in there, they actually still like kept tab on my friends pretty well. Well, a lot of time it's because in college, my parents they used to carpool together to drop us off in college. So that's
Ah.
how I got to know my friends' parents really well. Because in the car ride, they'll talk to us, and
Yeah.
even now, where my parents, even though they don't see my friends all the time, they still ask, "Oh, how's your friend? How's their kid?" So my parents actually know my friends pretty well because considering that they weren't around that much when I was growing up.
Yeah. I think they really cared. They
Hmm.
want same like we are parents now. They wanted to make sure you're surrounded by the right kids, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
What are some, sometimes what I wanted to go into is as kids grow up and become teenagers, really communication with their parents. Things change, right? You used to have this sweet little girl or this sweet little boy who just smiles and
Uh-huh.
nods
Hmm.
and listens and everything you say, daddy, like, yes, mommy, yes, daddy. But all of a sudden, whole other person comes out, this teenager who says no to everything, who slams the door and is not interested in spending time with you and all that good stuff. What are some of your recommendation of communication between parents and their newly transformed teenagers, because the parents are not used to it, right? They're used to a different child.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
sometimes we as parents have to learn um, that these are now no longer kids but young adults
Hmm.
in the makings. Especially, what are your recommendations there when it comes to communication?
I always tell parents, one thing is sometimes a lot of time is they might not talk to you directly, but doing certain activities together kind of help bring out the communication.
Mhm.
I think cooking is a very important thing.
Cooking.
Because
Yeah.
I grew up in a household of chefs. So my dad
Yes.
make sure that's the and you know that my dad is a great chef and make
Yes,
sure
he
all of
is.
us know how to cook properly.
So you cooked together growing up?
We were forced to. We were my dad's sous chef. So
Oh,
like every
that's
time he
good.
cooks, oh yeah, every time we cook, he have us there prepping and taking care of everything. So when we have big meals, big family meals,
Mm-hmm.
we are there to help out. And that's how we learn the family secret. I don't go by recipe. I go by because I watch how my dad cooks, right?
Ah,
So
I
the
didn't
one
know
thing is
that.
my dad's always like very important is family meal is you don't miss family meals no matter what.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I tell parents is that having that, even if your kids don't talk to you, having that consistent having family meals help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because my dad worked in a restaurant, so he worked like 14-hour
Oh,
day. The only time
yes,
we ever
yes.
see him is
Mhm.
Tuesday, and half the day he's at the restaurant. So that's the thing. But when my dad is home, we never miss a family meal with my dad ever. Wouldn't have you liked that your mom kind of showed you how to cook certain dishes before you were sent off to the real world?
Yes, I would have eaten better in the beginning.
So I think during this time you don't have to talk more, but I think if you did like at least once a week where you have your kids help with you to prepare a meal and then make sure that you guys still do at least one some family meals together,
Sure.
and then especially for the kids if they have a hand in making that dish,
Mm-hmm.
they'll own it and they actually will want to eat it more and will
Yes.
want to
The new
join you.
vegetables that they didn't want to eat before.
Yes, but if they had to go with you to help you prepare the dish and everything, then I think that family meal, there's like, oh, I have pride in what I made, and
Mhm.
then remember these are life skills that will carry on with them really well.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
So, so in med school was hard for me because I went to Chicago. Best thing I ever did was I became friends with two other people, and then all of us know how to cook. So then we came up with what we call family dinners. So once a week,
Oh,
one person will do the cooking for 6 people, and we had to invite a a class member.
oh, okay.
So we
That's
will always
great.
invite a class member, and then we'll have dinner together. And one person will cook for the 6 of us. And
Wow.
then each week we had to pick a different date. So
Wow.
after
New
two
friends,
years,
huh?
yeah, after 2 years, we actually got to meet everyone in our class and got to
I love
uh,
it.
yeah. And then after a while, like our people would joke about our family dinners, and then they would try to say, "Hey, can I be your date this week?" We heard that like yeah. So that's the thing. Our family dinner thing ended up being a pretty big thing, and because of that, we became really good friends. We got to one, take turn, cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think food brings people together really
Oh,
well.
so true.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
then because we learned to cook, and then because we had this whole thing like you had to invite someone different from class.
Yeah,
So each week we got to meet someone different from our class and get to know them a little bit better.
I
So
love that.
by the end of 2 years in med school, I actually got to know pretty much everybody in my class because my class is about 100 people.
Yeah.
And then, but it was nice after a while, people heard about our family dinner, and it is like a family because we're away from home. But because
Yes.
of our cooking skills, and we set this up and everything, we only had to cook once every 3 weeks, right? Um,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
then we
So
got
it's not
to
too bad.
and we got to have good food, good company, and got to meet our classmates. And this
Oh,
is how I actually ended up making a lot of friends in med school.
yeah. This is great. This is
Yeah, so
great.
I tell parents that yeah, if you start this where you could start to begin, teach your kid to at least make a few dishes. So yeah, one of my tips when I have the kids come talk to me in college
Mm-hmm.
is I tell them about what I do with what we call family dinner, like how I met with my friends and we
Mm-hmm.
started by doing this thing. I tell them like, hey, you could try doing this in college. If once you don't live in the dorms,
Yeah.
if you want to do this, and it's kind of nice because then like I said, your friends will be one of your biggest support in college.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And a lot of time is food brings people together.
Yes. And they have a new family because sometimes there's anxiety and stress coming
Yeah,
along
and
with
yeah,
being
because that's
alone from
Yeah,
home.
you're alone and everything. So that's why we call this family dinner. And then so you kind of set up so then you guys share food together, kind of feel like a family. So it's nice to have another family away from home. And then so my three friends that I've in med school that we did this with, I'm still friends with them, and we still meet up and bring our kids to hang out.
That's great.
Mhm.
No, some of the things I do to increase communication with my kids, we try the eating part, but some of the other things is I try to introduce them to songs and movies that I watched when I was their age.
Oh
And
yes.
just cringing in the beginning, it's like, what? Especially for my teenage daughter, it's like they look so weird, their hair is straight. Like there's just so many opinions from her part. But at least, one of the series was like, for example, Back to the Future,
Mhm.
and it was really interesting, and it kind of introduced them to certain things that we watched. And then also sometimes I play 80s or 90s music and I start singing there, and then
Oh
sometimes even though
yeah.
they complain but they pick up the songs, right? So at least kind of like connect, hey, this is what mommy listened to when I was your age.
Oh yeah, my girls, they love boy bands. I introduced them to NSYNC, Backstreet Boys.
I
They
love
they
it.
know their song and dance now.
Oh really, that's
Oh
awesome.
yes, yes. So
Right,
that's
see, so
that's really
it's,
true. Music brings people together really well
yeah,
too.
entertainment in general, right?
Hmm.
And the other thing I do is I try to challenge myself to at least get to know their world. So my younger son, for example, loves playing video games, and not exactly my cup of tea all the time, because that's not something I could talk about nonstop. But he does; he loves it, even
Hmm.
though it's a foreign language to me. Luckily, he has daddy who understands that language, so they talk to each other. And sometimes I feel so left out. So one time when they started a new game, I said, "Okay, I finally told myself I should join them because before I had no clue. I don't want to be an outsider anymore." So we played this game together called Empire and Puzzles.
Hmm.
That was I think last year, and we had to form a little clan. So I was part of the clan. I had to build a different thing. But at least when they started talking about things, I felt like okay, now I was included because I knew what got him excited. I knew what he was
Hmm.
talking about. So just because we expect them to understand our world, or follow what we set, the path we set for them, but at the same time I challenged myself to learn their little world as well. To me, that was very important.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And one more thing I wanted to share is to display what you teach them, that you as an adult show that as well. And this was a little bit embarrassing for me at the time, but I think at the same time really rewarding. So one of the things I always say and or joke before was I'm probably the only Asian in my 40s that never taken piano lessons before. So and then finally I said, okay, my daughter wanted to take singing classes, and my son wanted to take, well, not wanted, but I wanted him to play some sort of instrument. So we decided on the piano because I said maybe I should learn it. So I actually went to class with them. I went to the teacher and said, is that okay? Since I'm sitting on the bench outside waiting anyways, I'm like, can I just take the classes with them? And she's like, oh, sure, you can sing with your daughter and play piano with your son. So that's what I did. The funniest thing was during the first recital, right? Kids have recital. As a parent, I love to watch it. But the teacher's like, Vanessa, you should be part of it too. And I'm like, what? I don't want to do that. But you're part of my students. You should go. And I finally said, fine. So on that recital, the students had to come 30 minutes early and the parents had to wait outside. Well, I was a student too, right? So I walked in and one of the little kids just looked at me and said, aren't you supposed to wait outside? And I said, no. I was very proud. I said, no, I'm a student too. I walked in, I prepared, but I realized I was the only adult. Like literally, even though I'm not that tall, but I was like towering over all the kids by a head. And I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. So embarrassing. But I was afraid. I was like, oh my God, I have to sing on stage and play my little easy song on stage while this 8-year-old kid played a masterpiece. I was like there with my kiddie piano song. Um, but I thought at the same time it was, a unique experience for me to showcase to my children that, okay, I guess you just have to do as you talk. But some parents came up to me afterwards and said, oh my God, this was so great that you've done this. And I think there was one or two that actually started enrolling and to sing or play piano with their kids too, the teacher told me after. So I was like, okay, I guess I did good there.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. That's great that you did that.
Yeah, scary though.
Yeah. I can't believe you did not learn how to play the piano.
I
No,
know.
just kidding.
So
I
true.
actually don't know how to play the piano either.
Oh, you played the flute?
I play the flute. Yeah.
But anyway, so that those are some suggestions for communication between parents and teenagers, because it's getting harder once they're older. So you just have to keep trying. And vacation was another good way. Like for me, when I grew up, my parents, similar to yours, were in the restaurant business. So I never saw them either. But the one thing I remembered is our annual vacation. I think that's the 1 week or so we really spent time together as a family.
And I agree. That's the thing. Family time is very important. Even though, like, I know my parents, like my dad is such a workaholic. I hardly ever stay home. But the one thing he made sure we do was like, no, you do family meals. It doesn't matter if you don't talk during family meals.
At least you
Because we
sit
did it.
together.
Because a
Yeah.
lot of times, we were eating and then, we were watching TV at the same time, right? All
Yeah.
the Chinese soap operas and stuff. But the big thing is, you don't miss family meals. That's the one thing at my house. How Chinese people are, I think, food is how they show love.
Yes,
So
I've learned that. That's so true.
it's very true in there. So that's why even now, I, especially this year during COVID time, that we're forced to cook our own food now. So I do actually spend more time cooking for
These dishes are like never ending. So
And the one thing that helps, since I haven't been able to see my parents, is that every time we cook, we will send pictures. Like we do a family group chat, and we send pictures of our food that we cook for,
that's
and share.
awesome.
And so, because my brothers and sister and I, we all know how to cook, but we really don't really cook that much.
Yeah.
Because we're lazy. But this year, because of COVID, it actually forced us to cook.
So
And
true.
the one thing, and we don't get to meet up. So a lot of time is what we do is we take pictures of our food and we share with the family. Say, hey, we cooked this, we cooked that, and then my parents are actually very happy. They're like so surprised, like, what? You know how to cook this dish?
Yeah.
My dad is
Proud.
actually, This is
Awesome.
what kind of helped bring us together as a family. Even though it's COVID time is really hard.
No, it's been hard. That's so true. You still have to find a way to connect despite COVID.
I think my dad's actually very happy that he sees that we're finding cookies some of his dishes.
I
That he spent all
know.
these years trying to teach us.
I think that's the thing about parents. You try to teach the kids, but we don't, as parents, we don't realize how much they pick up. We think they don't know, but actually they pick up things and they surprise you later on, like in your
Yes.
case with the cooking skills, right?
Mm-hmm,
So that's amazing. I want to pivot really quick to the topic of technology, especially with this generation right now. Everybody, teenagers are on their phones or sometimes even younger, or their little devices, a computer or TV, not so much anymore, surprisingly, right? But all that, how has being connected all the time or in front of a screen impacted mental health? I wanted to ask about that. And what could families do to really improve and get their kids away from those devices?
It's good and bad having this technology, because the one thing with COVID is now that majority of people have to work from home, and for the kids, I think especially in the LA County, the kids are doing virtual learning, right? So the
Yes.
one aspect that's why kids are having more anxiety and depression, is because they don't have that social interaction. So, but the older kids are actually able to do okay with this because of technology, because all that chatting, and some of the kids are really good with the doing Zoom actually.
Oh my God, my son's the best, and he's the youngest. He's the best with Zoom
Oh yeah, my
among all
daughter,
of us.
sometimes like, I don't know how to do it, and she's like, Mom, here, let me show you.
So cute.
So that's the one nice thing about that technology, is that if you use it properly, you could connect even though you're not in person connecting.
Good
But
point.
but this is where it could be a problem, is because then you could have the cyber bullying.
Oh gosh,
Because
yes,
yeah,
I've read about
because
those.
for the one thing is, for the kids, they could really be mean to each other, because if you're kind of anonymous, then you could do a lot of mean comments and everything, like if you
Yes.
Facebook, or whatever comments. So that's the one thing, is that the teenagers, there are a lot more cyberbullying than we think.
Yes, I actually read an article about this, that comparing bullying from when we were kids compared to now, because back in the days, bullying ended when you left school. But now bullying extends 24/7 because now you go on social media and they can continue bully you there. So it just becomes nonstop. And the other piece is also like you were not aware of certain things without social media before, but now you can see,
Yeah.
James had a birthday party. Why wasn't I invited? But
Yeah, you
before
were
you didn't know
invited.
about it, right? So it's gotten worse there from a
Oh,
bullying.
it's gotten really bad because then then you realize you were invited, you feel left out, or like if someone record you do something embarrassing, then the whole school knows
Oh,
about
yes.
it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as a teenager, I think during this time, it could go both ways, where it could be really good, where it's social media could connect you, but it also could go the other way, where because the kids, they don't have that confidence yet.
Yes.
So having this social media could really crush your confidence.
Yes, because you don't have as many likes as your friend next door, right? I think sometimes when it comes to confidence, kids on social media, they chase the wrong indicators of their popularity, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And
and
right?
even now, that's the thing is that you see these teenagers constantly doing, like, the TikTok or selfies, and sometimes they're not even
Uh-huh.
enjoying the moment because they're trying to record
Yeah.
uh the experience and everything. And sometimes, and I'm sure that you've noticed this. And when I one time I went to the amusement park with my kids, and I saw these teenagers, the whole time they weren't even really enjoying the ride. They were so busy trying to get like a perfect picture, a perfect selfie. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, they're kind of really
Missing
missing out
out.
the point.
That's what I tell my husband all the time, who I call my teenage kid, because that's what he does. He loves to take selfies and he loves to just take pictures. When I'm like, go away. I want to enjoy the moment. It's a beautiful scenery. I want to look at the scenery, not your camera.
A- And I had to say, I have the same problem because I love taking pictures too. So my husband's always telling me, they're like, why do you have to record everything? And now I'm starting to feel like my kids now. So I was like, take a picture of me doing this. I'm like, oh, I need to step back and not do so many pictures. I don't want them to get so involved that everything has to. Um, they're at the age now. They're like, oh, take a picture of me doing this, mommy. Take a picture. I'm like, we don't need a picture.
And I think it's really a balancing act, because before, when my husband wanted to take pictures of everything and anything, I was like, no. But as the kids now get older, I actually now learn to appreciate the videos and the pictures, to reflect and look back and call back memories. Because now I'm like, oh, it's actually, I'm glad that he did that, but maybe balance it between enjoying the moment, what you're doing, and then also capturing some memories, not going extreme one way or the other.
Oh yes, because your husband and me were exactly the same. We love taking lots and lots of pictures. And my husband's the opposite. In 1 year, he would take like 10 pictures ever.
Oh wow.
He's the other extreme.
So it's everything is, I think, just a balancing act in life, right? There's good and bad to everything. It's just how you utilize them, and it's so true with technology. Let's circle back quickly to kids that have come to your office and you identified there could be potential mental health problems. What are the next steps?
A lot of time is I go through with figure out what the kids needs. I need to sit down, do parenting classes for the parents to do with the kids, or should I refer them to see a psychologist, or if it gets really extreme, to a psychiatrist. And this year with COVID, this is the 1 year that my number of kids with anxiety and depression have gone skyrocketed because of the situation. So actually I've spent a lot more time sending these kids to see a psychiatrist this year.
Oh, I know it's been tough.
Which is kind of sad, but the one thing is I feel like, well, at least I could step in and recognize the signs and at least give them the help that they need.
Yes. So I thank you for that. I'm sure that their parents appreciate it too. It's hard, but you mentioned classes earlier. So you sent them to specific classes. Is that through the health clinic that you're part of, or are those like online classes that the family takes?
Usually to the health clinic, that because we have some behavior because I have some for the kids who have like autism or ADD. There are some parenting classes, so depending on what they need, I will send. There's certain classes that's designed to help parents, especially for the autistic kids.
Yeah.
Because with autism is a lot of time of figuring how to work with behavior. and correcting certain behaviors and helping parents. So there are through Hoag Hospital, there are a few really good classes that the parents could take that will help them with their kids' specific diagnosis.
Yeah. So I guess it has to be very specific because sometimes there's so much out there and you might read the wrong information, right?
Yeah, there's a lot out there. So that's why a lot of time is for me is trying to, because I have my resources and trying to figure out what works best for the family and for their specific need. Because there's a lot of time is it's not just anxiety or depression, but there's ADD. Part of it is like, if they're autistic, so there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So that's what my job is, to figure out what the problem is and what resources I could put the parents through. And a lot of times, if I can't, then I send a social worker in to help out.
Yes. So I guess the recommendation overall is really talk to your doctor first to get the right diagnosis and not just randomly follow some suggestions on the internet that you come across.
And very important is to do your yearly checkup, because most parents, when they're teenagers, they're healthy, they don't need their checkup, but the checkup is checking the growth, checking to make sure they have their vaccines. But the big one is checking overall health, and the big one is mental health. So
yes, good
because
point.
most parents once you become teenagers, before, when you're young, you're like constantly make sure they go see a pediatrician to get their vaccines, right? But once you get to a certain age, you're like, oh, that's fine, no, we don't need a health checkup. But it's actually more important, more than anything else, is so that your pediatrician is there to kind of catch certain things that you might not catch as a parent.
That's so true. I haven't thought about it from that perspective, but you're very right. Because it's not just you look at them and it's like, okay, they're breathing, they're growing okay, everything's fine.
And they got the shot. No, it's because then you see that, that's why most parents were very surprised when I give them the questionnaire, because I'm like, this is part of your child's health, is not the mental health part. That's why they had to do this questionnaire. And I spend time with the teenagers, is really spending time and figure out if there's anything that I need to intervene on.
Good point. Good point. Well, thanks for sharing all this knowledge with us and all the stories and tips and tricks. I really, really appreciate it. And I love getting to know you from your professional perspective.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So I think this was great that we got to do this together.
Yes. And I'll talk to you very soon. Okay. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Wow. We have certainly covered a lot of grounds today, from talking about mental health to ideas on how to improve family communications and bonding opportunities. Now, I would like to challenge you, our listeners, on coming up with ideas of what you could potentially implement into your lives. Now, if you're a teenager, will you look for ways to listen more to your friends and share the behavior changes so they can get some help if they're needed? If you're in college, would you consider learning how to cook to use it as a way to increase bonding opportunities with your classmates and roommates? And now, as a parent, do you have any ideas on how to get to know the world of your children better? I would love to hear what you come up with in the comment or review section. And if you liked our episode, please make sure to subscribe or add us to your favorite list. We'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Bye!